it's time to let the feedback sandwich go. Okay, the feedback sandwich is where you say something good, then you give them some of the critical feedback, and then you say something good. The reason why it's time to let it go is because everybody knows it's coming. People are very savvy now, so they can tell when there's a feedback sandwich in the works. And they can never actually hear the good stuff you're saying because they're waiting for that other shoe to drop where you tell them what's not working. Why not just offer the critical feedback up front? That's one option. Another option is to ask the recipient, what do you want to hear? Do you want to hear the feedback about what I want to see you improve on first and then tell you what's going well, or the opposite? You can ask.
Right as you said, it's time to let go of the feedback sandwich. I was going to ask about whether we should do the feedback sandwich because I feel like if I received that paper that said do better, just a bunch of red marks, I would like shut down at least at first.
I'm a former practicing attorney. I've spent about 2 decades in law firms and professional development, and more recently diversity inclusion. In the world of D&I, you sometimes can see what I call check the box exercises. So,
Hmm.
for example, if everyone jumps onto the training bandwagon, training in and of itself doesn't have the greatest return on investment. But if you're here's what you can do to be more productive. You can pair that with coaching. So, and you can choose a particular area. So let's say you want to do unconscious bias training when it comes to hiring practices. Then
Hmm.
you can do the training with folks who are involved, and you can provide coaching for those folks as they're going through the hiring process. And then you can notice what's working, what's not working, continue to develop it and iterate it. And I think that's how you shift from a not so productive practice or pattern to something that is more productive. I think too, just telling people that you need them to do something, but then not giving them any tools to do it, probably not the best approach. So, for example, I mentioned feedback. We know it's good, we know it's important, but if people aren't doing it, especially if you notice they're not providing feedback to folks of color, you want to dig into that and you want to understand why and then offer some specific support around that.
So when it comes to like feedback conversations, obviously are not fun for most parties involved. Um, how can you talk more about how you can navigate those conversations in a like a positive way and what some of the benefits are of doing so?
So I have a background in training folks on how to navigate difficult conversations. This came out of my work at Harvard Law School. And
Hmm.
so I developed an interactive workshop on how to give feedback for the partners of the firm. And so what I'm doing in the workshops is I'm sharing a framework for how to have these conversations that allows you to prepare for them and hopefully navigate them with a little less anxiety and with more ease. And then we also talk about difference in feedback. So that concept of how it can be easier to give feedback to someone who is like you or looks like you. And when there's difference in feedback, that can create some challenges. So let's say, for example, that a white male partner is wanting to give feedback to a woman of color associate. You might be worried that what he says can be perceived as sexist or racist, in
Hmm.
which case he's not going to share that feedback. He's going to say, you're doing just fine. So we talk about how difference in feedback can impact the relationship and the associate's ability to grow and develop at the firm. Something you can remember and say easily is, I care about you and want you to do well here. And then provide the feedback. It demonstrates to the other person, this is about helping you grow and develop, and that's important to me. And I think that's often what people want to hear when they're on the receiving end of that feedback. I think, as I mentioned earlier, the second thing you want to do is share specific examples rather than talking in
Hmm.
broad general terms. I can remember when I was a junior associate at a law firm and I received back the red lined, it looked like it was written in blood, it's just marked up and memo of my work. And the partner had put a handwritten note at the top of the memo that said, do better. Who, what? What does do better mean? Some specificity would help. I think a common mistake that people make is they just say, I'd appreciate any feedback. And you may not get it when you ask that question. I think you want to be
Hmm.
a bit more specific than that. You could say something like, well, how would you have handled this? Or what would your approach with the client have been in the case of an associate talking to the partner? Or I noticed you changed this point here. Will you tell me more about that?
What can leaders do to ensure that people of color, other minoritized people, feel comfortable being open about their experiences?
I think providing opportunities for underrepresented groups to share their perspective is really important. But then you have to take it a step beyond that. You have to then be sure to look for ways to act upon what it is that you hear. And then there's a step beyond that where you then have to communicate that you've done so. It's really important. If you're going to ask people to share about their experiences, you want to make sure that, you're demonstrating that you heard it, you're trying to make an effort to do something with that feedback, and then you're making sure that they know that that's what you've done.
In an office environment, you have to work together to create an effective workplace, and that includes working together to build a more accessible, inclusive workplace where everyone feels comfortable to do the rest work.
D&I requires every person in your organization to be focused on making the workplace an inclusive space where everyone can achieve.